Welcome back to Human Spirit. I'm Rachel Hunter, and we get to speak to Mark Sagar. He is incredible in AI. This conversation that we get to kind of dive down this rabbit hole into the world of AI and understand consciousness and feelings. And is this going to take over the world? Is it smarter than us, or do we continue to outsmart it? To be able to connect with him in this interview, it was really cool. We really get to jump down this rabbit hole of AI. And I think it's really, as far as I'm concerned, important for me to keep up to date with this type of evolution, AI evolution. And also, please go Google on YouTube. We'll put the link in below. The baby, your emotional contact with his baby thing on TED Talks. It's pretty incredible. So I hope you enjoy the interview.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Oh, what a big subject. First of all, I remember when I met you on board Air New Zealand, and I don't know why, but anyway, we were both coming home at some different period of time. I think I was filming Tour of Beauty, which was over like 12, 13 years ago. And you handed me your card, and I saw the name Soul Machines on there, obviously. And so when I came to do this podcast, I was like, I have to have someone from AI. My first question to you, which is, what is consciousness to you?
Oh, that's a big question.
I know, but you related it to AI, which gives it this human, and it just flipped me out a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's so many different definitions of consciousness, and so I'm always reading about different theories of it, and one of the so there's a couple of different questions, there's many questions around it, but one of them is, why does it exist at all? And then the other one is kind of like, how does it operate? And so nobody really knows why it exists. They don't know whether it's this other form of other dimension in the universe, or whether it's something which is kind of just sort of appears out of information being processed. And so I originally got interested in consciousness when I read this book called Gödel Escher Bach by this sort of philosopher / computer scientist, and he was wondering about the question, can a non-biological thing be conscious? So in other words, does the substrate, what it's made of, does it have to be made out of cells in order to be conscious? And so if, because say, for example, it's information that somehow becomes aware of itself, it could be running on something different or whatever. And that question, nobody still knows the answer to any of this, but that kind of got me thinking. And then his book was sort of relating all these different forms of basically it was Gödel, the mathematician, who is famous for his incompleteness there, and we can't know all truths, right? So which is an interesting thing. Then he had Bach, the musician, and then he had Escher, the artist, and he was showing how there were similarities across all of these, and including writing like Lewis Carroll as well, Alice in Wonderland, and then he was. In this book, it's this crazy book, but it basically kind of asks us a question: are we this strange loop? Like, are we something where we transcend? So you have a pattern happening, do we kind of transcend that pattern? So literally the pattern forming creates something new.
Right.
So something emerges from it. So that was a sort of, which is...
How long ago was that book?
That book was
a
guy called Douglas Hofstadter, and I think it was written in the I'm going to guess here, but maybe the 90s or late 80s.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of relatively
it was an amazing book. It won the Pulitzer Prize and everything. Anyhow, it got me thinking about that. And then after that, I started reading about lots of neuroscience things and just really exploring the thing. And in the scientific community, it started becoming a thing that because before people would talk about it and they'd get poo-pooed about it, but then people started going, these really serious scientists, like the guy that discovered the structure of DNA, started writing about it. And he was really interested in that. And it turns out a lot of the quantum, the famous scientists from the sort of in the 1920s were writing about this. So it's been this question, which is almost like one of the last big domains of the unknown.
Yeah, unknown.
And so it's so deeply fascinating. Anyhow, so there's all kinds of different angles on it. What I've been reading at the moment, which is really interesting, is an idea. It's called active inference, but it's about consciousness being not only it's a control system as well as as what you experience. So you perceive things, but at the same time your consciousness is kind of like you're becoming aware of certain things, and it's part of how you're acting.
Yeah.
So it's this integration of perception and action.
Yeah, because that's what one of my first things was. Your mind is revealing what you are seeing or experiencing. Yes. Where did this all start, and how did you even jump into that?
I've always been interested in the like at the core, what makes something alive, and part of that is it's conscious. What makes something an agent, that it's got free will and that it can interact. And so I've always been interested in, like, in the film industry. I did a PhD in bioengineering before that, but then I was working on the human face. So I was building models of the eye for a surgical robot, but then I started working more and more on the face, and then was approached by sort of ex-movie producer to see if I could build digital actors. And so I started building faces, and I got very, very interested in the quality of what is it like in an animation that gives the illusion of life, because that's what, for entertainment, you need to convey, because what people pay attention to,
you feel, you have that relationship.
And the reason people care so much about it, the attention to care for a character, is that if we think that something else has agency, right, is thinking and making its own mind up, we have to pay attention to that. Yes, because it could be, if it's a lion, for example, it's a gazelle, it needs to look where the lion's looking. Yes. Because if the lion is looking at it knows I could be food. And so what other people think that have agency is probably the most important thing of all. This is why, I love people watching. So it's like, it's so fun watching, people interact and all the different things. And you look at all the old paintings and you see the eye lines of the different people in the paintings, and there's a story there. So there's all these components, and so it's like, what is being created in the mind of this agent or person, and how's that conveyed back out? So when you're working with I can start.
No, keep going.
Well, you can. So working with the actors, of course, the actors, living person, they're
you're not even thinking of that. You're just being who you are. You're just being.
They're being.
But you're able to create off that.
Well, the first thing was like, it's like somebody's making music. Yeah. So basically, they're when actors performing, it's like a musician doing jazz or something like that. And so, in creating the computer characters for things like Avatar and King Kong, it was about how do we capture the essence, the life of what they're doing, and convey that sense of soul in a artificial character. This is not a real thing, but how do we get the audience to basically believe that this character has an agency and it's got its own life, because then they're invested in it, they care about it. Yeah. And so then I started sort of thinking, what happens if we make that interactive? Like, what would it take to then actually have a computer generate those same sort of responses? So in a way, it would have to start processing the world a bit like we do. And so that was a sort of, I once I had that sort of thought about putting these things together, then I thought, okay, well, I better start a lab to do this. And then that was when I started working on building a digital baby. So
I know the digital baby was quite interesting, because it's funny, like, I now have a grandson, and then so when I was looking at this baby that you gave birth to.
Yeah, it was very painful. Yeah.
It was like I started feeling for the baby as soon as that baby, when you went off the camera, and we'll put the link to where this can be seen, as soon as you went off the camera and the baby just started, I was like, please go back on the camera because I don't want the baby to feel like that, but we're immediately having a response to an artificial intelligence. How do you see this going? Because all I see on Instagram, AI agencies, AI assistants, build your own AI, they're teaching us languages. They we're starting to have relationships. And it reminds me of that movie, Simone, years ago, where you actually jumped down that rabbit hole with them.
Yeah, rabbit hole's a good word.
Yeah.
And where it's going is somewhere, people, it's happening a lot faster than people expected. Now, the things that I was working on was, a bit different because it was more about the embodiment of AI, and it was really trying to, build a model of a more holistic model of a human and the emotion and so forth.
Yeah.
Whereas the current sort of AI boom, which is happening, is really that they've basically, compressed the internet. And the profound thing is that you can actually speak to it with any sort of sentence and it will understand you and give you something sensible back. But it is statistics. It's just this massive amount of statistics which will predict the next thing that happens. And so in some ways, what we've created is a reflection of ourselves and a reflection of our written content.
When we read this is changing our consciousness immediately.
Yes, because it's a loop. Yeah. And this is actually why humans are super important as part of that loop, because I just read a study recently which said that these large language models, the main AI ones, they collapse when they're trained recursively, which means they're trained on themselves. So you imagine you've got one of these, Chat GDP or something, and it's and it's trained on the internet.
Yeah.
So it starts now creating all this content, and now everybody's using this stuff to create content. And then it goes and reads itself. It's in an ultimate echo chamber.
Right.
So it actually turns into loop. And so too much, it's kind of like if you're in your own bubble.
It's like you're talking about the same thing over. It's someone repeating their pattern over and over
apparently
again.
It gets worse.
It's kind of a human flaw.
Yes, no, exactly right.
Within the AI,
yes,
is it's just on constant repeat.
Exactly. And
so it's a flawed state.
Yes, exactly. And so this is why, no worries.
It's listening to us.
Yeah, but this is exactly why.
It's not happy with that answer. You're flawed.
No, but basically, this is why the people that wrote this paper, they said this is why it's so important to have humans in the loop on part of this, because it's like, when you're talking to another person, the reason you're talking to the other person is not to hear your own thoughts. It's actually to learn something. And you want to be taken in places that you hadn't thought about or whatever, because then ideally, to me, the best conversations are where two people leave, both of them are changed.
It's almost like watching our state of consciousness of how we all want to be, leaders or thought leaders, or, have the information, blah, blah, blah. But really, some of the consistently expanding our own evolution and our own state of consciousness is consistently experience life as humans, obviously.
Yes.
To not imitate, but what we're doing is chewing out material, for like the ebooks and the this and that. So it is a perpetual ring.
Yes.
And so how are we going to feed this machine?
I think with this sort of stuff is like, we want to create new knowledge and new experience.
Yeah.
So we don't want to be in the same sort of echo chamber, black box. So, so in a way, the more that we create outside of AI, the better. And I think that we're going to see a fundamental change in art because, at the dawn of the century, the camera became really popular, came out, and there used to be realistic art, and then when the camera came out, they go, oh, we can make this with a camera. So then that's when, expressionism and things like that started, because the abstraction of art capturing the essence of the human feeling became the important thing because the camera couldn't capture that. And I think we're going to be in a similar type of revolution now, because there's this, at the moment, like you've seen the AI image generation, and they create beautiful images.
Oh my God, I know.
But the thing I really like Nick Cave's angle on this. His idea on it is that when a human artist creates something, they have to express their struggle. They're expressing some struggle that they're having, some craving for meaning that they have to do to put something out there. Whereas the machine's not doing that, right? It's just doing statistics. And so the AI generated art doesn't have human struggle as part of the generation of it. And that's why I think we're always going to be drawn to something which is meaningful to us.
Because the scary thing I think people think is that we have created on a visual level with Simone, that movie. That's the only one I can think of that really, as well as Avatar. You're immediately connected to these beautiful creatures, and also the Planet of the Apes. You can't but be. And in a reality, you go up to the chimps. I've spent time with the gorillas as well. You can't have but this place where you feel this evolution between the two. Are we going to make a machine conscious?
I think my guess is that
this is just thought as well.
I think that so there's one of the other sort of ideas of there's this guy from I think Princeton University called Michael Graziano, and he's got this really interesting theory of consciousness, because he's saying, what is it about, like the special thing about consciousness is you can actually describe what you're thinking about, right? So if I'm conscious about something, like if you ask me right now, okay, I'm aware of all the things in this room, and the thing is, so somehow I've converted my awareness or my experience into words. And he's saying if the sheer fact that I can express myself about it means that it has to be formed of information at some level. And so he thinks that why consciousness is so mysterious is because we're forming an awareness. So I can tell you about, what I can see, how my body feels, and certain things.
That's pink, that's yellow, this is bright, that's a word, I know what that
exactly,
word.
My hand
we're imprinting
is
immediate, we're sponging.
Yes, we're getting all this. But he's saying that the part of the brain that is actually creating that, we don't have access to. So the thing we've got information about the body.
Hippocampus?
Oh no, it's literally the I don't know exactly where it is.
I call it the hippocampus.
Yeah, it's very, well, that's a key part of our memory, So it's like apparently it's super active during dreaming and all kinds of stuff, which is a whole other topic. But it's like so this thing that we're able to get information from the body and describe it, but we don't have access to the center which is kind of aware of that, and so it makes conscious. And so this guy's idea about consciousness,
so it's like this beautiful abyss hole that we don't know, but we're only really limited at what we're taking in. The same as probably what AI is, because you're programming it at that level.
There's a few. So where this.
Sorry.
Yeah. So he's got this idea of an attention schema or something like this. Is like the sort of almost like the things that you're aware of, so that you could actually write down. Now, and he says that, in terms of like what's most important for us as agents living in a social world is to know what other people are aware of, other agents. So we have to form a model of what other people are thinking at the same time as knowing what we're thinking. And so So we're in this overdrive about building, these mental models of everybody else. This is the whole theory of mind stuff. Why is somebody doing that? What are they looking at? What are they doing? What are they going to do next? And we need to know all this stuff to kind of predict what they're trying to do next. But this guy's idea of consciousness is really interesting. He's saying that in that case, it's a projection that we put on everything else. And he's got these very interesting ideas. Like the most extreme one is that God is a projection of your own consciousness onto the universe, which is really,
Wow.
but it's kind of like we are projecting. If you believe this, it's like we're projecting our own sort of understanding onto an object which we don't know about. Like if for example, if you stub your toe on a rock, you might go and kick the rock and go, stupid rock.
Yeah.
Right. And at that moment in time, you're thinking that the rock had something to do with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, but obviously with people, it's it's a million times more complex, and a gazillion, bazillion times more complex. So, but this tendency to sort of project this, understanding of the information of what this thing is aware of is kind of like that's a sort of a consciousness that you can explain. It's not explaining the deep stuff about why does it exist or what's the experiential quality of it.
Obviously, there's a great fear of some people thinking that these AIs can turn on us, and obviously we're living in a duality in this world anyway. Can you speak to that?
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's so broad, but
that's the thing.
I know you can't be boxed into one thing.
Yeah, no, because I think the whole thing of AI is such a broad field. So if you go something like, okay, it's used in autonomous weapons, and some drone is basically making up a decision whether to
do that
attack
or whatever.
somebody, then that's really scary future, which is actually happening. That's really scary. And then you've got the other side where it's actually we're using
positive
it.
effect.
Yeah, and this is where we're using it to increase our productivity or to help us. Like, say, it's used in medicine to discover disease variants and things like that. So I think it's like at that point it becomes it's just this very powerful tool.
Yeah.
And you can use it for good or bad.
Yeah.
And so in terms of super AI taking over and tricking us all, I think it would be like somebody, if we're in a village, we would ostracize somebody that was causing trouble. So I think it has to be made trustable, and we have to want it as a society. So I think that we will make sure that it stays within those bounds. Even if it's super smart, it'd be like having a master manipulator or something in your village. And don't do everything that they tell you. But it is kind of, so I think humans in the loop is the most important thing, because then as a society, it means that, in terms of jobs and things like that, people are using it to empower themselves and others.
And keep, I guess, people safe too.
As
long as it's not turned on you. I mean, everyone's going to think, oh, but what if that turns on you and da-da-da.
Yeah.
I remember somebody, I think it was some psychic, said, the deja vu is you experiencing actually yourself in some other field at the same time. And I thought it was a really kind of interesting way to look at it, instead of going, oh, deja vu, I was here before and da-da-da. But it was really interesting when they said that. They were like, you're experiencing yourself in another field of reality somewhere.
I had one of these I had the interesting experience years ago at this computer graphics conference where you put on a headset and then there was a robot with a camera which was kind of driving around out here, but it was looking at you, and it was mobile, and it was like this sort of out of body experience which was created through the technology, which was really trippy, because it was like, you're getting a manufactured this experience. But partly back to what you're saying before, it's like in a way, the technology is a mirror of ourselves. So we are seeing ourselves.
What loop are we in?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. And that's why I think we need to, make sure that and make sure that loop grows. That we're not stuck in the same loop.
Wow, that's like that actually really solves a lot of, not solves, but puts people back into that constant state of evolving and evolution.
Yeah, which I think is super important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, soul.
Yeah.
What is that to you?
To me, it's the part of you that grows. It's the part of you that learns. So it's like I think it means many things, but it's like the sort of meaning that I like the simplest meaning that I like the most is we all experience things and we struggle through life and challenged by different things, but it's the part of you that kind of grows throughout your life. And so I really like that idea. I had a conversation on the weekend. I was talking to this woman, and she was going, I could have been, if I had the choice of being, say, Princess Diana or something, she said, would I choose that, or would I choose to be me? And she was saying, I would choose to be me, because the thing is it's like we've all got our own, the way I see it anyway is we've all got our own set of cards that we're given. We're all kind of born with different situations and different
scenarios
happen. And it's kind of like, okay, we're all in this big kind of journey of life, and so we're all starting from different places with different equipment and different whatever. And so your challenge is to use the cards that you're given
to evolve.
And yes. And so you're going to have a different set
Drop the story, move forward, take the tools, what we know, what we've learned. Yeah.
And it's like, so if you're progressing or improving or there's something that you're getting out of that in some way, that's all that really, that is like, that's all that really, you're evolving in some way, then that's wherever you start from, whatever your journey is.
Yeah.
Because, then that's what you want.
When you think of scientists, when you think of AI, there's just such a robotic way about it. But you've kind of brought in this part of it that makes it real, but it feels like we do have control. And with what you've shared,
I'm interested in the holistic angle of all.
That's what I was going to say. So you're moving into a different. Obviously, Soul Machines has gone off and had its own day, and you're no longer there now.
That's right. Yeah.
So how do you want to see and go forward with all the information that you've collected over this time? What do you want to move into with it?
Well, I'm sort of exploring different options at the moment, but one thing I'm really thinking about is that how can we use all of this to effectively become I guess better versions of ourselves, or to
it's almost like a reflection, healthier. Like it's reflecting.
It's kind
on
of
you
like it's
learn.
like something where exactly. So it's like one of the things I'm thinking about at the moment is how can you use these types of technology to become a broader person, to
less ignorance,
and also more positive and aspirational, and how do you take all the good qualities that we aspire to and make a change in your life? Like it could be anything from I want to get more fit, so you go do more exercise each day, or it could be I want to know more about something. I've been reading Brian Eno's journal. So he wrote the music producer. He wrote this book like I think it's over 25 years ago, but he was at the time, he was making an album with U2 and David Bowie and all kinds of stuff. So and he decided it's called a year with swollen appendices or something. And basically so he decided I'm going to write, for 1 year in my life I'm going to write this journal. What's so and he's such a brilliant thinker and artist and so forth. And what's amazing about it, and of course his life is incredible because one day he's in advising for the museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Next thing he's working on something with David Bowie. Next thing he's in Egypt, visiting the pyramids and all this sort of stuff. But then he's also got the mundane things in his life, and then he's also got all these things where he's just musing about stuff. Like he's at a bus stop and he sees something and he just goes, oh, that made me think of blah, 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 blah. And
recall.
And it was the whole thing that he got that down. And that really inspired me because I thought, I need to start keeping a journal like that, where I'm actually just writing down whatever's coming to my mind, because it's those, rather than I did this, blah, 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 it's actually, musings, it's thoughts about things and stuff. And then I thought, if you had a sort of AI model, which is kind of encouraging you to reflect, so just 5 minutes a day or something. So it's like a live journal.
It's like you're in a journal.
It's so it's just a reflection tool. as you get older, that could be passed on to your kids or something, and then they'll have a sort of,
a library of why you thought it that way. Because sometimes we can be misunderstood with, like you said, expressions, or because we have all the sensory, which a robot does not have, AI does not have, can't taste the senses, smell. One of the most primordial things, which creates procreation, which creates food, which creates hunger. It can't smell, but smell can be a hugely triggering
your memory.
So, and I'm sure from your body, from pulse going up, or it'll be like, why is this affecting you? It's kind of crazy because you could actually start questioning you, going, why are you feeling like this?
Well, I had an interesting, and you feel your body's response to something. So you think about something and you go, I don't know what that is, but my body has responded in a certain way. So I must, it makes you question, okay, my body's telling me one thing, my mind's telling me another thing. I need to be more, reflect more on this, present, and be more conscious of that. And it's like, and so I love that whole, taking all of these angles into account. And so I think that you want something where it has your well-being at heart, but it allows you to kind of reflect and things like that, but can also nudge you in a more positive direction. So maybe if you're using
a companion almost.
Yeah, a little bit like, exactly. So it's kind of like if something's sort of detects you're using quite depressed words or something like that, then it might go, hey, it's really nice today outside, it'd be great. Or, have you talked to such and such in a while? So
because we are lacking. When I was doing Tour of Beauty, I really saw in all the ancient cultures more of a sense of community, the togetherness, the wanting to be together. There's more of an isolation in some societies, and there's a loneliness. Some people are okay with being alone, but there is that part of.
Oh yeah, I just saw an amazing film. It's just about, they had a prior screening at this conference I was at in the weekend, but the movie is called Join or Die, and it's about community and social capital, and what it was talking about is that this American professor noticed that since basically the advent of the television, membership of clubs and institutions and all kinds of things has been on the decline, and so what he's saying, and he was doing this experiment in Italy where they actually changed the political system all over the country at one time, the way that, but so he could study how each state responded to a new set of laws, and it turned out that each state's constitution didn't matter so much. What mattered the most was that people were members of clubs and members of communities, and if you had a good community, then pretty much everything in society worked. So this film is really showing that, the whole rise of populism, like, we're seeing extreme versions in the US at the moment and all that sort of stuff. That's as a result of the decline of community and a decline of people being together. Because the general idea is that, if you're a member of a community or group or whatever, you have to behave more, you have to be more conscious of of being a good citizen, right? Because it's like you've got a reputation. You don't want to be ostracized from that group or whatever. So by us being alone, like, you think of the lone person in a dark room on the internet typing out hate stuff, they've got nobody to tell them off or whatever, right? Whereas if that person's part of a community, they'd be going, hey, what are you doing?
To stop that,
And they wouldn't do that because it wouldn't be, and so the sort of
accepted.
Yeah, and so I think that that's a super important thing. Is that
how do you think you'll be able to move around? I guess it would be how much time you're allowed with this thing, companion, to stop that we start relying on AI.
I think it's super important that we don't. So
exactly.
That's the whole thing,
I just wanted to put that.
Absolutely.
So that you're only limited. You cannot extend that. So we don't get into relying on just AI to be in a
Yeah,
thingless.
absolutely. So, and it goes the same just for even a device today. I have to actually pry the phone out of my daughter's, so my 12-year-old daughter's hands. It's like, because she's so stuck, and that's not even,
because we're already in that state right now,
exactly.
so we can't really. AI is no different. We're on the phone all the time scrolling.
Exactly. So I think it's super important to not create something which is exploitative or addictive. I think addictive it should not be at all, because this is where I think there's an opportunity to do something, because I think that, you've got these big companies that are trying to effectively create the most addictive things that they can, but that's not beneficial to people. That's not going to make you a better person or whatever. Whereas if you've got something where you spend 5 minutes a day and it keeps you off those things, like go talk to people, go outside, go for a swim, go do this sort of stuff. Those are things where it's it's literally just a thing to remind you to not
be there.
And it's like so one thing is like having a dog, for example, right?
Or it's like going to the doctor, but you're not going to stay in the doctor's all day.
Yes, exactly. No, that's right.
Right?
And
like you're just going in, check in. Okay, now
or a trainer or something like that. It's like it's a thing to get you into better habits and so forth. But say you've got a pet dog.
I wonder what it would reject you somehow.
Well, maybe no, because the thing is but it's like
I'm having a nap.
but I think so. Exactly right. Because the whole thing is like what's and it also depends on your situation. Like say that you're 90 and because we've got this population inversion thing where we're going to have all these, especially in places like Japan, you're going to have all these old people and nobody to look after them. At that point, things like loneliness is actually a real problem, because there's actually just not enough younger people to care for those people. And so to keep, mental health in good state, that's where, it may be better than nothing type thing. But in the case where you've got people around, no, the people are way better, and it needs to reflect that. And even, if you have a dog, for example, one of the benefits of having a dog is that it makes you go for walks.
Yes, it gets you and socialise when you go for a walk.
Exactly.
You see all the dog people.
Exactly.
I just lost my dog a year ago, and I don't have that accountability to go out and walk my dog and communicate, and we stand and talk and your neighbours and everything. So
and me too. This year, actually, earlier this year. So it was like it's absolutely traumatic.
Hole in your life. Yeah.
But it is that thing about it's something that's caring for you. It's got your best interests at heart holistically. Then I think that kind of works. It's like the dog cares for you.
Yeah.
You care for the dog cares for you, and so so that's this beneficial thing. But with the AI, it's not a living thing or anything. But if it puts you in a better place, then it's got value, right?
Yeah.
But it has to be, I think, a holistically better place.
Yeah.
So
I love that you're going in that direction of the holistic side of that. How long do you think that will take?
Well, I'm sort of just exploring options at the moment, because we're just looking for funding for that at the moment, and so it could take. We could have a prototype in a year or two, like a base one, just because the technology is moving so fast. So that obviously depends on all these things coming together.
What is human spirit to you?
Human spirit, I think that's a good one. It's for me. It's like I guess my God is nature. I just love nature, and it's the connection to that. It's like a feeling of the infinite, and it's a feeling of like it's almost like a guiding force. It's kind of like kind of what's right or wrong, and it's so it's this connection to the unknown is probably for me that's what it is, and it's a benevolent. It's I believe in I do think the universe is there's a benevolent universe. I know it's really horrible in lots of cases, but overall, I think if it wasn't, be a miserable, because there's so much wonder in the world. There's so much pain in the world, but there's also so much wonder in the world, and so it's the spirit is the striving for the wonder over the pain. You have to experience pain in your life. I think that that's it is one of those things that, another, Nick Cave quote was, he's basically saying, you need to experience things like grief in order to have a fully human experience.
Yeah.
And so, I think these things, it's kind of like these, good and bad exist. As long as we're striving for the good, then, our heart's in the right place.
Thank you so much for even just touching the surface of this. And I hope that you can come back, and I'm really interested to see how and also I think for people, if you don't understand something fully, just having conversations like this helps you diffuse what could be potentially scary in some ways.
Oh, and I think there are scary aspects of it, and so I think we got to just have our eyes super open, and because it's coming at us like a ton of bricks, and it's so vast because it is a reflection of so
like
much
literally
of
opening
the world.
up and looking down the abyss of
It's
something.
kind of like gee, we've got the internet and It's kind of like the internet compressed type thing, and it's like, there's so many rabbit holes and things, but we've also got to be aware that it's a statistically generated world that's coming at us and it's hallucinating all the time, and not to trust it. Like, I don't say anything now that you see which is generated with AI, do not trust it. Absolutely, because go search out the facts for that, because it's just generated that stuff from a random hallucination. And it's statistically correlated, but it's not true. Like, if you look up certain things that and it's got an AI summary, don't believe it. It's like you got to get in there and check it. So
the human component's still very, very sacred and special.
Yes, and you got to do your research. It's kind of like, whatever you hear on the, don't believe everything you read on the internet type stuff. But the computer doesn't know whether it's true. It's just reading everything on the internet.
I get some things on there and people go, do, and I'm like looking at them, how can you think that that's real?
Because it's linked, if it's linked things in a way where it's got some false correlation with something. And
it's making stuff up.
Yeah, and this is the problem is now when it starts reading itself, right, it's believing its own lies. So this is why you can't trust it. Use it as a tool, but be very aware.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark.
Pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Mark. It's fascinating, and I think it really gives food for thought. We have to keep inputting into AI for it to keep evolving. Do we still keep the upper hand on it? I mean, that's yet to be seen. It gives us some kind of framework to deal with, and I really hope maybe in the future to continue having these conversations with him, because I think that they're really important, because obviously more than likely AI is not going anywhere. I hope you enjoyed that, no matter what age you are, that you enjoyed that episode. Join me next week on Human Spirit with Rachel Hunter.